in the community of Dota, there is oftentimes a discussion, sometimes a debate, on whether a team should just have one shot caller or if the responsibility of shot calling should be shared between players. Are there multiple shot callers? And in this video, I'm going to talk about just, the facts about the mechanisms and how, these things work in these, these complex, stressful task environments, as well as share my perspective on why I think my perspective is, the superior way to navigate things and to do things. So, first things first, let's talk about, with Dota being a very complex task environment, there is a ton of information in a game of Dota. And this right here, this is all information in a game of Dota. That's a horrible arrow. And this is hypothetical, right? So there's all this information, and it's impossible for one person to retain all this information. And let's talk about what this information might be. In this bubble of all the information in one game of Dota, that is the cooldowns of your teammates, both items and spells. This includes cooldowns that might be 5 or 10 seconds short. You always have this internal timer where you just know immediately right when they get their spells off cooldown. Everyone without saying anything, you just know, right? And there's also the items and abilities of enemies. You just know. You just have this internal, timer, tick tock, tick tock. You just know the cooldowns. All that information is information that is technically trackable in a game of Dota, but one person cannot keep track of all the information, and that's why we need to communicate and use our bandwidth to share information that's critical, so on and so forth. So this is all the information available in one game, and this is hypothetical in nature because one person, it's kind of abstract. One person can't retain all that information. However, we can cover a big chunk of that information, and let's put in our team information pie here in the middle. So this is the bubble that the team has, or the team information bubble, or the information that has been shared between the team members. And let's go ahead and fill this in with a different color. Let's go red, green, or yellow, green, blue, and actually want that to be orange and this be blue. Okay. So this is out of all the information available in one game of Dota, this is all the information that my team has. And obviously teams want to expand their team information bubble to expand, to cover as much area of all the possible, information. You want to expand that bubble to be as big as possible, but you can really only expand this bubble so far, just within the limitations, of us being human beings, of communication bandwidth. There's a lot of factors that limit how big this bubble can be. But this is what, this is going to be our example. So this is all the information available in a game. This is all the information that has been shared and expressed amongst team members. So we have a solid chunk of the information available. So here's the issue with having one shot caller. And, we have to talk about kind of the chaotic nature of player skill. And what do I mean by chaotic? So chaotic is a word that we use to describe graphs that are random and predictable at the same time. What do I mean by this? So there'll be spans of a day, a couple days, where I'm just in a state of Dota clairvoyance. I'm just in a flow state, and when I tell you, I could literally just see through the fog of war. Now, I don't, when I say that, I don't mean, you know, I'm map hacking. I can literally see the heroes through Fog of War. I mean, like, from just a sliver, just a minuscule amount of information from just heroes flashing in a Fog of War at very abstract, you know, points and locations all around the map. I can piece together a puzzle, and with that information, combine that with just knowing, like, what their goals are, what they want to do as a team, as each individual heroes. I just paint this picture where there will be times and phases where I just know where every single hero is on the map, what they're trying to do, and what the team's game plan is, the opponent team's game plan is, which is like 98% accuracy. I'm just in this flow state, and when I'm in one of these flow states, the state of Dota clairvoyance, I will go 19-2. I'll shatter my records of my highest MMR. I'll go crazy, and it just feels like nothing. It's just natural, right? I get in these flow states. But then there are other times where I'll play 21 games of Dota and I'll go 2-19. I will, like, nothing is really I'm just getting, you know, traction. I just don't get any reads. I'm just not really able to, like, synthesize and comprehend information. Like, sometimes I can take a minuscule amount of information, compound that, and just paint the entire picture of the enemy team. Sometimes I will literally be given all the information. It should be an easy game, an easy, you know, situation where I should be able to read a lot more into it, but I can't get any traction. I don't have a grip on things. And I'm just playing bad, quite frankly. And I'll go on a streak of going 2 wins, 19 losses. So everyone has these phases of playing good, really good, and playing really bad, and it goes up and down, up and down. You know, with this being one of the peaks of, like, you know, Dota clairvoyance, this being, you know, one of the bombs where you're just playing like dog doo-doo. Now, this is one of the big issues with having one shot caller. So everyone is going to be on their own time frame regarding, like, the phases of, like, how good they're playing right now. So let's say this red player right here, he is the mid player, and he is the highest MMR. He's Mr. Mid, and he is the highest MMR by a long shot. This guy's like 7K, everyone else is like 4K. We're playing RD2L. There's a whole bunch of MMR disparity. So this guy is supposed to be the shot caller on the team. He wants to be the shot caller. He's like, oh, I'm the highest MMR. I'm the best. Everyone listen to me. But here's the reality, and this is just a fact, is that Mr. Red mid player is going through phases of playing really well and playing really poorly. And let's say the team plays a best of 3 series where he's on one of his peaks, where he's just playing out of his mind, and the games might be, you know, might feel great. You know, he's making these calls, the team's going along with him. It's just the right call every time. Every single play is going to get impact, and things go really well. But then the very, very next play, he might be in one of these lows where every single call that he makes is just the wrong call. And the other, like, 3K, 4K players on the team, significantly lower skill level, they know it's the wrong play, but he's the shot caller, and they go along with it anyway because he's supposed to, you know what's best. But he's in one of these lows where he doesn't have that traction, he doesn't have that grip on the game, where he's just making bad shot calls. Then the next series feels terrible. He gets mad. Things get toxic. And you're at the mercy of where is this player in this cycle of playing good versus playing bad. And that's one of the real issues with having this one shot caller, because there's this issue of just, like, you know, there is these phases of playing good, playing bad, but also as a mid player, he's going to be, you know, very, very focused on things like power runes, like, you know, as the laning stage is coming to an end with the first 2 power runes popping up, he's really going to want rune control, you know, at the end of the laning phase, and the rest of the way into the game, like haste runes and double damage runes, keeping track of those is always going to be critical to, like, taking good fights and whatnot. He's always going to be thinking about runes. Me as a pos 5, I'm not thinking about rune control and power runes and whatnot, because as a mid player, he's going to be doing that. He's going to be sharing that critical information regarding runes, you know, regarding runes for the rest of the team. Me as a pos 5, I'm constantly going to be thinking about warding. I'm going to be thinking about, where can I get wards down? Where do I want my team's wards down? How, you know, what is my team trying to, what is my team's goals right now? How can I place wards that will help us accomplish our goals? I'm also thinking, where are the enemy's wards? Where are they behaving kind of funny where I could recognize they might have a ward down? And then 2, where do they want wards? Where would a ward for them be really bad for us? I'm constantly thinking about wards. So, Mr. Mid Player is constantly having this information about power runes and rune control cycling in his mind. I'm not thinking about that as a support. I might kind of think about that from time to time, but I'm mostly thinking about the, observers and placing wards, dewarding, and whatnot. So there's just 2, from being a mid player to also just, being concerned about like rune control, whatnot, a bunch of different information cycling through his about power runes, a bunch of different information is cycling through my head about wards that he's not thinking about. So all of his decisions is going to be around his synopsis of how the game is with the information that he has, but even though I'm going to be trying my best to vocalize as much relevant information about my role regarding wards and whatnot with the team, there's always going to be a chunk of information that's exclusive to myself, because with limited bandwidth for team communication, I'm not going to be able to communicate everything. There's always going to be some exclusive information to each individual person. And, with specific, with specific communication trainings, teams can decide what each person needs to, vocalize and whatnot. But in general, for right now, people are going to be contributing a lot of information to that team shared bubble, but there's still always going to be that exclusive information. And our decision making is going to be based on all the information that we as individuals have. So there's always going to be some information about warding that Mr. Red mid players is not going to have access to. And he's going to be making decisions without that information. And that's important because Dota is such a complex game. There is so much information. Think about what I said before about, item cooldowns, ability cooldowns for your team, their team. There's so much information in a game of Dota. Not one player can retain all the information and make decisions based on the information, because let alone is it impossible to know all that information. There's also going to be information exclusive to each player that either isn't going to be communicated or just hasn't been communicated yet. So Mr. Mid Player only has access to his exclusive information as well as what's already been shared in that kind of team information bubble. So he just doesn't have all the information, so he's never going to make the most informed decisions as possible. So that's the other thing. Dota is so complex, one person just doesn't have access to all that information. But here is really the bottom line, going back to my first point regarding these phases of good play and bad play. If I have a team where the shot calling is shared, each and every player is going to be going through these phases of ups and downs. So let's say for this specific example, for this, RD2L team where there's a draft, there's a 7K mid player and a bunch of noobs, and he's like, oh, I'm the best, I'm going to be the shot caller. For this example, just to make it extreme, let's say he's on historic low. He is playing some of the worst Dota he's ever played in his life. And for this example, let's say every other player is in one of their peaks. They are in their state of Dota clairvoyance. They are in that flow state, and they are playing way, way above their MMR, and they're recognizing that he is not in, Mr. Red mid player is not in one of these good, states of clairvoyance. So actually, let's go down here. So every other player is in one of these peaks of Dota clairvoyance where they're just absolutely playing out of their mind. In this case, if the other 4 players are playing their best Dota ever, they're playing out of their minds, why would Mr. Mid Player be calling the shots? He might be the highest MMR, but the shots that he's calling might be the least informed and the worst calls, despite him being the highest MMR. So, and here's the reality, and what I think is the best way to do things is that if we break down these more macro trends of good play, bad play, if we kind of zoom in to this with a microscope, so, that's our lens, we're kind of, amplifying this little sliver right here. There's going to be ups and, you might be trending upwards, but even there's going to be like micro ups and downs kind of along the way. And that's where the word chaotic comes from, because It's like, predictable but random. You're always going up and down, kind of rising, falling. Um, it's kind of a thing about human data, but even within a game, there are still these micro balances of going up and down. And one of these peaks within a Dota game might be just this moment of flow or just the right decision. It's just a gut feeling. You in the middle of a game, you might already be in one of your peaks of playing good Dota, on a macro level, but then when you look at it, with a microscope, you might just get this revelation with the game where it's like, guys, we need to go do X, Y, or Z now. It might just hit you like a Mack truck, just instinctual gut feeling. When you have shared shot calling in a team, let alone are you not relying on just one person and the current macro state that they're in, you can rely on how good everyone is playing. There's going to be times where everyone on the team's not playing great. There's going to be times where everyone's playing great. But at least when there's shared shot calling, it's not all on the burden of one person. Also, when there's shared shot calling, if people get this gut feeling, this instinct of what the right play is in the moment, and they have the conviction to make a shot call, you want them to make the shot call. If someone gets that revelation that hits them like a Mack truck, and they say something with conviction, you want to do that, because if that revelation came over them, that most likely is going to be the right play. And if there's shared shot calling, everyone has the opportunity, when that moment of conviction hits them, they can make the shot call and the team can act upon that. So, like I said, let alone is there this macro view that could be spanning over days or weeks. There's also these micro bumps along the way where a peak and a micro bump might be a revelation that hits you mid game, where it's just like, based on the information that you have available in your specialty role, you might say, hey guys, we're gonna do this, or I know they're gonna come do this, X, Y, or Z. If we do this, we could slap them hard and own them, right? And me individually as a player, and also obviously with the information that I know, with the research that I've done and me being privy to this information, I'm always excited and ecstatic to act upon the shot calls that people say with conviction. When that revelation hits them and they say, let's do X with conviction, I'm like, yes, let's do that. Because I know if they're in this flow state or they got that gut feeling, that's most likely going to be the right play. And I might not be in a position, as far as like my macro performance state, or I might just not have the information to be in a position to have that revelation that the other player has. So the issue with individual shot calling is that even though a lot of information is going to be shared between team members, we're all going to have some information that's exclusive to us. If you have one shot caller, they're not going to have all the information. Whereas if everyone is shot callers, even the information that hasn't been explicitly communicated, that could still come into play when people are making, are making like, shots to call. The other issue with one shot caller is that there is this kind of macro performance trend. Things might feel fine when they're on a peak, but when they're on a low, it will feel terrible. And when everyone is shot calling, there's a shared shot calling in this team culture. You're no longer reliant on just one person's cycle. You now can rely on everyone's cycle. So where if everyone might be on a low, but if one person is just in their state of Dota clairvoyance, they're popping off and they can just see through fog of war and know everything that's going on. All of a sudden, the team can now, lean themselves on that one player who's in that state of clairvoyance, and you could basically always play to the strengths of your team as those strengths prevent themselves. So you're completely kneecapping yourself when you are entirely relying on one person to make all of your team's like macro level decisions for you. So that's why I think shared shot calling is just inherently better than having one shot caller. There are instances throughout history. So let's say like Team Liquid, when Team Liquid, won the international, you know, Liquid was one of these teams where KuroKy was this, the primary shot caller for the team. But those are these niche cases where KuroKy, probably trained himself to be in that position. If he was in a flow state himself, he could not listen as much to other people because he had enough of the information on his own. He could make the the right calls and everything. But if he was on a trending low portion, I'm sure KuroKy, trained himself to recognize that and to take in more information from other people into his informed decisions, right? So he'll be relying on other people and the information they provide a lot more, even though he might have the final say or the final shot call at the end of the day. So there are these niche circumstances where there's this one primary shot caller, and it might work out for a team like Liquid. There might be instances where a team has one primary shot caller and it works out for a series. But overall, having shared shot calling between a team and having the social safety where everyone has that trust in each other to just buy into whoever just gets that moment of just like Mack truck, it hits them, like they just know what to do. You want your team to be in a position where, like, if someone gets that conviction and they say something like, this is the right play right now, everyone needs to just trust that, buy in immediately, and go with that, because chances are that is going to be the right play in the moment. And there's just too many factors that go against this whole idea of relying on one person for everything.